The text that changed everything still burns in my memory. "We're not your servants, Eloise. Find real childcare." I stood frozen, staring at my phone in disbelief. For 7 years, I had paid my parents' mortgage, utilities, groceries, everything. Yet when I desperately needed one night of babysitting for my 5-year-old son during a career-critical meeting, they refused. The betrayal cut deeper when I discovered they were watching my sister's twins that very night. Something inside me broke. That moment led to a decision that would transform my family forever. My name is Eloise Baker, a 32-year-old single mom living in Minneapolis. I work as a healthcare administrator at one of the largest hospital systems in the Midwest. My story begins 7 years ago when my father, Frank, lost his job at age 57 after his company downsized. The timing couldn't have been worse. My mother, Grace, had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia 2 years earlier, which limited her ability to work full-time. Their savings were already strained from her medical expenses. I was 25, then recently promoted to a management position that came with a substantial salary increase. When my parents called to tell me they might lose their home, I didn't hesitate. "I can help with the mortgage for a few months, until Dad finds something new," I offered. Those few months stretched into 7 years. At first, it was just the $2,000 monthly mortgage. Then came winter, and their heating bill was past due. I covered that too. Grocery money ran short, so I added that to my monthly contributions. Before I knew it, I was paying for everything: mortgage, utilities, groceries, car payments, insurance, and even their cell phone bills. The total averaged around $3,500 each month. My younger sister, Audrey, lived across the country in Los Angeles. She moved there right after college to pursue an acting career. While I managed spreadsheets and hospital budgets, she went to auditions and worked occasional waitressing jobs. Our parents spoke of her with a particular shine in their eyes, always updating me on her latest callback or small role in a commercial. "Audrey needs to focus on her career," Mom would say when I gently suggested my sister might help with their expenses. "The entertainment industry is so demanding and opportunities come fast. She needs to be available." While supporting my parents' life threw me another curveball. I became pregnant after a relationship with Thomas, a pharmaceutical sales rep I'd been dating for 8 months. When I told him the news, he vanished from my life within a week. No explanation, just blocked me on every platform and never returned my calls. I decided to continue the pregnancy alone. Jackson was born 5 years ago, the most perfect baby boy, with bright blue eyes and a dimple in his left cheek. Being a single mother while supporting my parents stretched me financially and emotionally thin, but Jackson's smile made everything worthwhile. My parents helped with occasional babysitting when my regular daycare closed for holidays, though it always came with conditions and reminders of the inconvenience. I appreciated the help, but noticed something troubling whenever Audrey visited with her twins twice yearly. My parents transformed their home into a wonderland for those visits, planning special meals and activities for weeks in advance. "We're going all out for the twins, since they only get to see us twice a year," Dad would explain. Meanwhile, Jackson's visits warranted little more than a cursory hello and the usual warnings to not touch anything breakable. I tried not to let the difference in treatment bother me. Family helps family, I reminded myself. That's what I was raised to believe. Yet as years passed, I couldn't help noticing other troubling signs. One Friday evening, as I dropped off my weekly grocery delivery for my parents, I overheard Mom on the phone with Audrey. "The money arrived, sweetie." "Yes, that should be enough for your acting workshop. Dad and I are so proud you're investing in your career." Later, I found a bank statement showing my parents had sent $1,000 to Audrey that month. The same month they told me they couldn't afford their electric bill, which I had paid immediately. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They were taking my financial support and redirecting some of it to Audrey, while I struggled to build a savings account for Jackson's education. Despite this discovery, I continued helping them. Family is family, I told myself, pushing down the hurt. But that first seed of doubt had been planted, and it would only grow stronger in the years to come. 3 years into supporting my parents, my career was thriving. I received another promotion to Director of Patient Financial Services, managing a team of 30 employees and a department budget of several $1 million. The promotion came with more responsibility, longer hours, and thankfully better pay. I needed every penny of that raise because my financial obligations had only grown. The numbers told a stark story. Each month I paid $2,100 for my parents' mortgage, $400 for utilities, $600 for groceries, and various medical bills that often totaled over $500. Meanwhile, my own mortgage was $1,600 monthly. Jackson's daycare cost $1,200, and our basic living expenses consumed whatever remained. I tracked every penny, clipping coupons and foregoing simple pleasures to make it all work. The personal sacrifices accumulated quietly. When my colleagues took their families to Disney World, I explained to Jackson why we couldn't go. Maybe next year, Buddy became my constant refrain. When my apartment's aging refrigerator died, I bought the cheapest replacement instead of the energy-efficient model I wanted. Jackson's college fund received $25 monthly, when financial advisors suggested it should be at least 5 times that amount. My parents began watching Jackson occasionally when daycare closed for staff development days or minor holidays. These babysitting sessions always came with complaints. "He's so active, Eloise. By the end of the day, we're completely exhausted." Mom would sigh dramatically as I picked him up. "At our age, it's just too much." Dad would add, "You should really look into holiday camps. Other parents use those, you know." The contrast with their behavior toward my sister's children couldn't have been more stark. Audrey had twins, Lily and Logan, 3 years after Jackson was born. When she visited from Los Angeles, my parents transformed. Suddenly, they had boundless energy for childcare. They redecorated their spare bedroom specifically for the twins' visits, complete with new furniture and toys. For Jackson, they offered the couch with a threadbare blanket. During one family dinner, I watched in disbelief as Mom served the twins organic chicken specially prepared without salt or spices because children have sensitive palates. Jackson received a reheated hot dog from the night before. When I gently pointed out the difference in treatment, Mom dismissed my concerns. "Audrey's children only see us twice a year. Of course we make it special. Jackson is here all the time." The truth was, Jackson visited his grandparents only when I needed emergency childcare, perhaps once monthly at most. But in their minds, my son's presence was a burden, while my sister's children were honored guests. My parents constantly praised Audrey's artistic spirit and creative courage, while my practical career choices earned little recognition. "Not everyone can be special, like Audrey," Mom once said, not realizing how deeply her words cut. "Some people just have regular jobs, and that's fine too." The backhanded compliments stung for days. Despite these inequities, I maintained optimism. Family supports each other unconditionally, I told myself. My parents would do the same for me if our situations were reversed. This belief sustained me through countless financial struggles and emotional disappointments. Several times I attempted discussing the imbalance with my parents. "I'm happy to help," I explained during one particularly difficult conversation. "But I'm struggling to save for Jackson's future while supporting 3 households." Dad's response was immediate and pointed. "Family takes care of family, Eloise. Your mother and I raised you for 18 years without complaining about the cost. This is what families do for each other." The guilt trip worked. I retreated from the conversation, apologizing for bringing it up and promising to continue my support. The pattern repeated with each attempt at honest communication. One evening, while scrolling through social media before bed, I came across photos that stopped my heart. Audrey had posted pictures from a luxury resort in Maui. "Thanks for making this dream vacation possible," read the caption with my parents tagged. Just 3 weeks earlier, they had called me in tears, claiming they couldn't afford Mom's new medication. I had immediately sent $800 to cover the prescription. The realization that my money had likely funded my sister's beachfront cabana, instead of necessary medication, shattered something fundamental in my understanding of our family dynamic. I closed the app and stared at the ceiling for hours that night, trying to reconcile my parents' behavior with the loving family I thought we were. For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge the truth I was being used. The question was, what was I going to do about it? The email arrived at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning. Urgent all-hands meeting, system merger discussion, mandatory attendance. My heart raced as I scanned the details. Our hospital network was finalizing merger negotiations with a larger healthcare system, and all department directors were required to attend an overnight strategy session at a conference center 2 hours outside the city. Attendance was non-negotiable. This meeting represented a critical juncture in my career. The merger would result in departmental restructuring, and those who contributed meaningfully to the transition planning would secure their positions in the new organization. Those who didn't might find themselves redundant. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday, just 2 days away, beginning at 3 in the afternoon and continuing through Friday morning. I immediately called Jackson's daycare to see if they offered overnight care options. They didn't. I contacted 3 babysitting services, but all were fully booked on short notice. My closest friend Tracy was traveling for work that week. As my options dwindled, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. There was only one solution left: my parents. I hadn't asked them to watch Jackson overnight before. The few times they babysit were always for a few hours, never extending past 8 in the evening. Still, this was an emergency affecting my job security. Surely they would understand. I called Mom, first explaining the situation. This meeting is crucial for my position after the merger. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't absolutely necessary. Her response was immediate and cold. "Oh, Eloise, you know overnight is too much for us. Your father needs his sleep, and my fibromyalgia always flares when my routine is disrupted." "Jackson goes to bed at 7:30, I explained. "He sleeps through the night. You'd just need to be there in case he wakes up, which rarely happens." "Please, Mom. My job could depend on this meeting." "You should have planned better," she replied. "Professional women make arrangements for these situations. We're not a daycare service." Desperate, I called Dad next, hoping he might be more understanding. Instead, his response was even more cutting. "We're not your servants, Eloise," he said, his voice hard. "We've done our child raising already. You chose to be a single mother. That's not our responsibility." The words felt like a physical blow. "Dad, I've paid your mortgage for 7 years. I've never asked for anything in return until now. This is one night. And we're grateful for your help," he replied, his tone softening slightly before hardening again. "But that doesn't mean we're at your beck and call. We've raised our children. We deserve our retirement. Find real childcare like other working mothers do." The conversation devolved from there. Dad accused me of being entitled. I reminded him of the thousands of dollars I sent monthly. He suggested I was using financial assistance as leverage, which wasn't how families should behave. When I hung up, my hands were shaking with anger and hurt. With no alternatives left, I called my colleague Beth, whom I knew only professionally. Embarrassed and desperate, I explained my situation. Though clearly surprised, she agreed to let Jackson stay at her house with her own children. I was intensely grateful, but mortified at having to impose on someone I barely knew because my own parents refused. The emergency childcare arrangements affected my performance at the crucial meeting. While others focused entirely on strategic planning, I was distracted by texts checking on Jackson. When executives asked for my input on financial integration timelines, my response lacked the confidence and detail it should have had. I noticed the chief financial officer making notes during my presentation, his expression unreadable. The next morning, I left the meeting early to pick up Jackson, missing the final networking breakfast that everyone else attended. I arrived at Beth's house, exhausted and anxious, profusely thanking her while trying to hide my professional distress. "It's really no problem," Beth assured me. "Jackson was an absolute delight. He and my boys played dinosaurs until bedtime, and he slept straight through the night." As I buckled Jackson into his car seat, my phone pinged with a social media notification. Absently, I checked it while closing the car door. What I saw froze me in place. My mother had posted photos last night with the caption, "Sleepover fun with the twins. Grandma and Grandpa duty is the best job in the world. Number blessed grandparents, number twin time." The timestamp showed 9:30 p.m. right in the middle of my crucial meeting. The pictures showed my parents building a blanket fort in their living room with Audrey's twins, making special heart-shaped cookies, and setting up sleeping bags in the living room for what was clearly an elaborate, planned sleepover. My sister had commented, "Thanks for being the best grandparents ever." The twins couldn't stop talking about their special sleepover all week. All week. They had planned this for days, maybe longer. The same night they told me overnight childcare was too much for them. They had hosted an elaborate sleepover for my sister's children. I sat in Beth's driveway, unable to move, staring at the photos, until Jackson's voice broke through my shock. "Mommy, can we go home now?" Looking at my son's innocent face in the rearview mirror, something hardened inside me. The betrayal wasn't just against me. It was against Jackson, who deserved grandparents who loved him as much as they loved his cousins. It was in that moment that I knew something had to change. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. The drive home from Beth's house passed in a blur. Jackson chattered happily about his adventure with Beth's sons, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I nodded and responded automatically, my mind replaying years of inequity in a painful slideshow. Once home, I settled Jackson with his favorite cartoon and retreated to my bedroom. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I stared at the photos again. The smiling faces of my parents with the twins looked alien to me now, like strangers wearing familiar masks. How could they do this? My first instinct was to call them out immediately. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, angry words forming and dissolving as I considered and rejected confrontational approaches. Instead, I texted my friend Tracy, "Need to talk. Family emergency." She called within minutes, despite being in another time zone for work. I poured out everything: the years of financial support, the preferential treatment of Audrey and her children, and finally, the devastating betrayal of the sleepover. "I'm trying to rationalize their behavior," I confessed, tears finally breaking free. Maybe they had already promised Audrey before I asked. Maybe the twins have separation anxiety and need their grandparents specifically. Tracy's response was gentle but firm. "Eloise, listen to yourself. You're making excuses for people who are exploiting your generosity. They aren't just failing to appreciate you, they're actively taking advantage of you." "But they're my parents," I whispered. "Family helps family." "Help goes both ways," Tracy countered. "When was the last time they helped you without complaints or conditions? When was the last time they put you first?" I couldn't answer. "You need to see the full picture," Tracy continued. "How much have you actually given them over these years?" The question stunned me. I tracked my monthly contributions meticulously, but had never calculated the total. After ending the call with Tracy, I opened my financial tracking spreadsheet and created a new tab labeled Parent Support. Methodically, I entered every payment I'd made on their behalf over 7 years. The final number appeared on my screen, $216,340. I stared at the figure in disbelief. Over $200,000. I could have bought a vacation home. I could have fully funded Jackson's college education. I could have invested in my retirement. Instead, I had handed it all to people who wouldn't watch my son for one night. With growing determination, I decided to investigate further. I drove to my parents' house the next day, while they were at their weekly bowling league, and Jackson was at daycare. I still had a key. I needed one to deliver groceries and check on them when they claimed health problems. In their home office, I found bank statements they had never shown me. Contrary to their claims of financial struggle, their accounts showed comfortable balances. They had been making regular deposits to an investment account while telling me they couldn't afford basic necessities. A folder labeled Home Improvements contained receipts for a kitchen renovation completed just last year, a $22,000 project they had somehow managed to fund while I paid their mortgage. The renovation had never been mentioned to me. Most devastating of all was a text exchange I found on my father's iPad, which he had left open on his desk. A conversation with my mother from just 2 weeks earlier. Dad, Eloise asked about reducing her monthly contribution. Said she needs to save for Jackson's education. Mom, we can't let that happen. The kitchen is done, but I still want to redo the bathrooms. Besides, Audrey needs help with the twins' preschool tuition. Dad, I'll talk to Eloise. She always responds to the family obligation angle. We just need to keep her helping until my Social Security kicks in. Mom, and we need to be careful about getting too involved with Jackson. If we babysit too much, she'll expect it all the time. Better to establish boundaries now. My hands trembled as I took photos of these exchanges and documents with my phone. They had been manipulating me, deliberately planning how to keep me helping while explicitly avoiding involvement with my son. The final piece fell into place when I opened their filing cabinet and found my grandmother's will. I had never seen the document before, though I knew she had left everything to my parents when she died 10 years ago. A letter was paperclipped to the will addressed to my father in my grandmother's handwriting. Frank, I've always worried about the way you and Grace favor Audrey over Eloise. This imbalance isn't fair and will only worsen with time. Please use my inheritance to treat both your daughters equally. Eloise works so hard and gets so little recognition for it. Don't make the mistake of taking her for granted because she's reliable. The dependable child needs love too. My grandmother had seen the pattern decades ago. Her dying wish that my parents treat us equally had been ignored just as my 7 years of sacrifice had been taken for granted. That evening, I confronted my parents with what I had found. I laid out the bank statements, the renovation, receipts, the text messages, and finally my grandmother's letter on their dining room table. You've been lying to me for years, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I've given you over $200,000 while you renovated your kitchen and funded Audrey's lifestyle. Their reactions confirmed everything. Instead of shame or remorse, they responded with defensive justifications. We never forced you to help us, Dad argued. You offered. Audrey's career is unstable, Mom insisted. She needs more support than you do. When I mentioned my grandmother's letter, Dad waved it away. Mom was always sentimental about these things. She didn't understand the real world. The real world, I repeated slowly. In the real world, Mom, Dad, people don't take advantage of their children's generosity. They don't play favorites with their grandchildren. And they certainly don't refuse one night of babysitting after accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in support. I left their house that night with absolute clarity about what needed to happen next. The patterns established over decades wouldn't change through conversation or compromise. Only decisive action would transform our family dynamic, and I was finally ready to take that step. The weekend after discovering the full extent of my parents' deception, I made 2 important appointments, one with a financial advisor and one with a therapist. Both confirmed what I already knew, deep down. I needed to establish boundaries for my financial and emotional health. Financial enabling follows the same principles as other forms of enabling, explained Dr. Mariah Wilson, the therapist I consulted. By continuously rescuing your parents from the consequences of their choices, you're preventing them from developing self-sufficiency and responsibility. My financial advisor, James Harrington, was equally direct. At your current rate of contribution to your parents, you're sacrificing your own financial security and your son's future. The math simply doesn't work long term. With professional guidance, I developed a 3-month transition plan. The first step was drafting a formal letter to my parents as doctor. Wilson suggested that written communication would prevent emotional manipulation during an in-person discussion. I spent hours crafting the letter, balancing compassion with firmness. Dear Mom and Dad, after careful consideration of our family's current arrangement, I need to inform you that I will be ending my financial support over the next 3 months. This decision is necessary for my financial well-being and Jackson's future. For the next month, I will continue my current level of support. In the second month, I will reduce contributions by 50%. In the third month, I will reduce to 25%. After that, my regular financial assistance will end completely. This transition period should give you adequate time to adjust your budget, explore senior assistance programs, or make other arrangements. I'm happy to help you research these options, if you wish. My love for you remains unchanged, but the nature of our relationship needs to evolve into one of emotional rather than financial support. Love, Eloise. I hand-delivered the letter on a Sunday afternoon. Jackson waited in the car with a movie on the tablet. I didn't want him to witness what might become an unpleasant scene. My father read the letter, first his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to anger. He handed it to my mother, whose face crumpled as she processed my decision. "You can't be serious," Dad said. "After everything we've done for you," the old guilt trip that had worked so effectively for years now bounced off my newfound resolve. "I am serious," I replied calmly. "And I've documented exactly what each of us has done for the other. The balance sheet is dramatically uneven." "We're your parents," Mom cried. "Family doesn't keep score." "Apparently you do," I countered, thinking of the text messages about keeping me helping while avoiding involvement with Jackson. "I'm simply acknowledging the reality you created." The conversation deteriorated quickly after that. Dad threatened that I would regret this decision. Mom began crying about potential homelessness. I had anticipated these reactions and remained firm in my resolve. "You have 3 months to adjust," I reminded them. "Your mortgage is affordable on Dad's pension if you budget carefully. Your home has substantial equity. You have options that don't involve taking advantage of me." As I turned to leave, Dad delivered his parting shot. "Don't come crying to us when you need help with Jackson again." The irony of his statement, the assumption that I would ever again ask them for child care after their recent betrayal, almost made me laugh. Instead, I simply said I won't, and walked out. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. Audrey called first, her voice shrill with indignation. "What the hell? Eloise, Mom, and Dad are devastated. How could you abandon them like this?" I explained my decision calmly, including the years of financial support I had provided, while she contributed nothing. "That was your choice," she argued. "Nobody forced you to help them." "And now it's my choice to stop," I replied. "Nobody's forcing you to step up either, but they're your parents too." Her response revealed volumes. "I can't afford to support them. I'm an actress. My income is unpredictable." "I'm aware," I said. "I've been subsidizing your career for years through our parents. That ends now." Over the next few weeks, my parents cycled through various tactics to change my mind. First came health crises. Mom claimed her fibromyalgia had worsened dramatically due to stress. Then came the guilt trips Dad mentioned, how embarrassed they would be to downsize in front of their friends. When these approaches failed, they escalated to threats. "We'll have to tell the entire family how you've abandoned us," Mom warned during one particularly tense phone call. "Feel free," I responded, having already documented everything. I have spreadsheets, receipts, and copies of their bank statements showing exactly what happened here. The most difficult manipulation to resist was their attempt to use Jackson. "He'll grow up knowing his mother turned her back on her elderly parents," Dad said. "Is that the legacy you want for him?" "Actually," I replied, "I want him to grow up seeing his mother establish healthy boundaries and knowing his worth isn't determined by how much money he gives to people who treat him as an afterthought." Throughout this challenging period, I maintained meticulous documentation of every interaction, saving texts, emails, and recording phone calls with their knowledge. Dr. Wilson had warned that boundary-resistant family systems often engage in reality distortion, and evidence would be my best defense. True to my word, I reduced financial support by 50% in the second month. My parents' shock that I was actually following through was evident in their increasingly desperate communications. By the third month, with support reduced to 25%, they began making actual changes. Dad found part-time work as a consultant in his former industry. Mom joined a fibromyalgia support group that helped her manage symptoms more effectively. They met with a financial advisor of their own and began exploring reverse mortgage options. As the final payment date approached, I experienced conflicting emotions, guilt and grief, mingled with pride in my newfound strength and hope for a healthier future. The transition wasn't just financial. It represented the end of a dysfunctional pattern that had shaped my entire adult life. On the day I sent the final payment, I attached a note. This completes my financial support as outlined in my letter. I remain open to building a healthier relationship based on mutual respect and emotional connection. Their response came in the form of an accidentally forwarded email from Dad to Mom that appeared in my inbox. Eloise sent the last check. Time to call Audrey about Plan B. If she won't take Audrey in, we'll have to try your sister Martha instead. The revelation that they were already plotting their next manipulation, trying to get me to house my sister after she apparently lost her apartment, confirmed that my decision was not just necessary but long overdue. 3 months after ending my financial support to my parents, I experienced a strange mixture of liberation and grief. For the first time in 7 years, my entire paycheck belonged to me and Jackson. I could finally increase his college fund contributions, plan a modest vacation, and even begin saving for a larger apartment with a backyard for him to play in. The grief came in unexpected waves, not for the money I had given, but for the relationship I had believed existed. I mourned the parents. I thought I had the ones who would have watched Jackson overnight without hesitation, the ones who would have appreciated my years of sacrifice. The extended family drama began almost immediately after my financial separation. As my parents had threatened, they contacted relatives with their version of events. Cousins I hadn't spoken with in years sent accusatory messages. An uncle called to lecture me about family obligation. "Your parents raised you for 18 years, he reminded me, echoing my father's favorite guilt trip. Now you're abandoning them over one babysitting request. I gave them 7 years and over $200,000, I responded calmly. The babysitting was just the final revelation of where I stand in their priorities. Most relatives weren't interested in my side of the story. Family mythology had long cast me as the practical, emotionally detached daughter and Audrey as the sensitive, artistic one. My decision to stop financial support fit neatly into their pre-existing narrative about me. Meanwhile, my parents faced genuine consequences for perhaps the first time in their adult lives. Their financial reality required significant adjustments. They put their house on the market planning to downsize to a condo. Dad increased his part-time consulting hours. Mom took a volunteer position at the library that occasionally paid a small stipend for special events. The most surprising development involved Audrey. With my financial pipeline cut off, my parents turned to her for support. Her Instagram posts about coastal lifestyle and manifesting abundance gave way to complaints about family burdens and unexpected financial strain. During one rare phone conversation, my father accidentally revealed that Audrey had moved back to Minneapolis. "She's staying with friends until she finds an affordable apartment," he said. Los Angeles became too expensive without. He trailed off, catching himself, before admitting that my support had been subsidizing her lifestyle. As my parents and sister adjusted to their new financial reality, my own life transformed in unexpected ways. Freed from the constant drain on my resources, I threw myself into my career with renewed focus. 6 months after the fateful overnight meeting, the one I had struggled through while worrying about Jackson at Beth's house, I received a significant promotion in the newly merged healthcare system. The position came with a 30% salary increase and more flexibility to work from home 2 days per week. For the first time since Jackson's birth, I could be present for school drop-offs and pickups those days, a change he noticed immediately. "I like Tuesdays and Thursdays best," he told me one evening as I tucked him in. "Those are mommy days." The simple observation brought tears to my eyes. While I had been working myself to exhaustion supporting 3 households, my son had been silently noting my absence. Now, with our financial burden lightened, I could give him not just material security, but also my presence. With my additional income, I opened a proper college fund for Jackson with automatic monthly contributions. I scheduled minor home repairs I had been postponing for years, fixing the leaky bathroom faucet, replacing worn carpet in the hallway, installing ceiling fans to reduce our summer cooling costs. Each improvement to our living space felt like an affirmation of our worth. The most unexpected support came from my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia. She called out of the blue 6 months after my financial separation from my parents. "I've been hearing things," she began cautiously, "about you refusing to help your parents anymore." I braced myself for another lecture, but what followed surprised me. "I wanted you to know that I understand," she continued. "Your grandmother, my mother, saw how Frank and Grace favored Audrey from the beginning. She tried to talk to them about it for years. That letter she left wasn't the first time she addressed it." Patricia shared that she had experienced similar treatment from my parents in their younger years. Frank was always their golden child, and I was expected to make sacrifices for his opportunities. "It's a pattern in this family that goes back generations." Her validation of my experience was profoundly healing. For the first time, I didn't feel crazy or selfish for recognizing the imbalance. Someone else had seen it too, multiple someones, including my grandmother. With therapy and distance, I began developing a support network outside my family of origin. Beth, the colleague who had watched Jackson during my work emergency, became a close friend. We arranged playdates for our children and occasionally covered childcare for each other during school holidays. I joined a single-parent support group that met monthly, finding community with others who understood the unique challenges of raising children alone. One member, a single father named David, particularly understood my struggle with boundary setting. My parents wanted all the grandparent privileges with none of the support, he explained during one meeting. It took me years to realize I was allowed to expect reciprocity in family relationships. As my social circle expanded, I felt less dependent on my parents' approval or acceptance. The hole their emotional absence had left began filling with authentic connections based on mutual respect and genuine care. 7 months after our financial separation, I received an unexpected email from my parents. The subject line read, "Possible reconciliation," but the content revealed their true motivation. They had found a potential buyer for their house, but needed temporary housing during the gap before their condo would be ready. "We thought perhaps you could host Audrey in your spare room," my mother wrote. "She's struggling to find affordable housing, and it would be a perfect solution for everyone." I stared at the email, noticing the familiar manipulation tactics, the implication that helping Audrey would somehow benefit me, the positioning of their request as a reconciliation opportunity rather than another attempt to extract resources. Before I could respond, another email appeared in my inbox. This one had been intended for Audrey, but was accidentally sent to me as well. "Try appealing to Eloise's maternal side. Remind her that family helps family. If she takes you in, we can stay in your apartment until the condo is ready." The realization that they were still plotting, still manipulating, still viewing me primarily as a resource provider rather than a daughter worthy of respect, confirmed that my decision to establish boundaries had been absolutely necessary. Instead of anger, I felt a strange sense of clarity and peace. The parents I had been mourning, the ones I thought existed beneath the manipulation, were a creation of my own hope and denial. Accepting the reality of who they actually were became the final step in my emotional liberation. 1 year after ending financial support to my parents, I barely recognized my life. The constant stress of stretching my resources across 3 households had lifted, revealing a calmer, more confident woman beneath. My promotion had settled into a fulfilling routine. Jackson was thriving in kindergarten, his natural curiosity and creativity flourishing with the additional attention and resources I could now provide. My parents had completed their downsizing, moving into a 2-bedroom condo that better suited their actual needs and financial situation. The necessity of managing on their own resources had forced them to develop skills they had avoided for years. Dad had expanded his part-time consulting work into a small business advising companies on staff transitions. Mom had discovered a talent for organizing community events at the library, turning her volunteer position into a paid part-time role. The most surprising transformation occurred with Audrey. Faced with actual financial reality for the first time in her adult life, she had abandoned her acting aspirations and enrolled in a teaching credential program. She discovered that working with children in drama classes brought her more consistent satisfaction than chasing elusive acting roles. "I never actually enjoyed the audition process," she admitted during one rare honest conversation. "I just felt like I had to prove I was special by doing something glamorous." Our relationship remained strained, but was slowly evolving into something more authentic. Without our parents actively triangulating between us, we began cautiously exploring a direct sister-to-sister connection. The most significant breakthrough came unexpectedly. My father called one evening, his voice lacking the manipulative tone I had grown to recognize. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said, the admission clearly difficult for him. It was part of the retirement coaching program through my consulting network. I didn't want to go, but it was included in the package. He paused before continuing. "She asked me questions about family patterns that no one has ever asked before. About why I always favored Audrey. About why I expected so much from you without acknowledgement." For the first time in my adult life, I heard my father take responsibility without deflection. I saw myself in Audrey, creative, impractical, afraid of the real world. "And I saw your mother in you, capable, responsible, able to handle anything. I convinced myself you didn't need support or praise because you were strong. I was wrong, and I've been wrong for a very long time." His apology wasn't perfect. Old habits of justification crept in several times. But it was genuine, and it opened a door I had thought permanently closed. My mother's journey toward insight proved slower and more resistant. During a family therapy session that my father had requested, she struggled to acknowledge the favoritism that had shaped our family. "I love both my daughters equally," she insisted. "I just showed it differently because you had different needs." When the therapist gently pointed out that financial support, babysitting, and emotional validation weren't different needs, but basic aspects of parental support that had been given abundantly to one daughter and withheld from the other, Mom grew defensive. "Eloise always seemed so self-sufficient," she argued. "She never needed us the way Audrey did." "I needed you," I said quietly. "I just learned very young that showing need resulted in disappointment, so I stopped asking." The session ended without a dramatic breakthrough, but a small crack had appeared in my mother's defensive wall. She agreed to continue family therapy, a commitment that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. With professional guidance, we established clear, healthy boundaries for rebuilding our relationships. Financial support in any direction would require explicit discussion and formal agreement. Babysitting would be arranged with clear expectations and equitable distribution between both daughters' children. Family gatherings would follow neutral principles rather than catering to one branch of the family over another. Most importantly, we adopted a policy of direct communication. The old pattern of triangulation, my parents complaining about me to Audrey, or vice versa, was identified as toxic and forbidden in our new family system. The journey toward healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks and old patterns that emerged in moments of stress. During one difficult week, my mother slipped back into praising Audrey's special creative spirit while dismissing my practical accomplishments. The difference was that now I could name the behavior directly. "Mom, you're doing the comparison thing again. It hurts when you elevate Audrey's choices while diminishing mine." My newfound confidence extended beyond family relationships. After years of focusing exclusively on Jackson and financial survival, I cautiously began dating again. I met Andrew, a civil engineer, and single father at a school fundraiser. Our first conversation about the challenges of single parenting quickly revealed a shared value system around responsibility, boundaries, and the importance of modeling healthy relationships for our children. By our third date, I felt comfortable enough to share my family history. Instead of judgment, Andrew offered understanding based on his own experience with difficult family dynamics. Healthy boundaries aren't selfish, he said. They're necessary for genuine relationships. You did something courageous. Jackson thrived with more resources and attention available. His kindergarten teacher noted his emerging leadership skills and empathy toward classmates. He has an unusual ability to notice when other children are feeling left out, she commented during a parent-teacher conference. He naturally includes everyone. Hearing that my son had developed the very empathy that my parents had failed to show filled me with quiet pride. Despite the family patterns that had shaped my childhood, I was raising a boy who instinctively recognized the worth in others. The most profound lesson from my journey emerged gradually. True family support must be reciprocal and respectful. One-way sacrifice isn't noble, it's unsustainable, and ultimately damages both the giver and receiver. By establishing boundaries and requiring mutual respect, I hadn't abandoned my family. I had created the possibility for healthier relationships to develop. On Thanksgiving, 1 year and 3 months after ending my financial support, I hosted dinner at my apartment. Jackson helped me set the table with special place cards he had made for each guest. My parents arrived first, bringing a homemade pie, rather than the empty-handed entitlement that had characterized previous visits. Audrey came with the twins, who played surprisingly well with Jackson after initial shyness. As we gathered around the table, I looked at the faces of my imperfect, evolving family. There was no sudden miracle transformation. My mother still occasionally slipped into old patterns. My father sometimes fell back on guilt as a motivational tool, and Audrey continued working through her own journey of responsibility and self-discovery. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time, we were relating as adults with legitimate boundaries, rather than locked in the dysfunctional roles we had played for decades. My parents were present as guests rather than entitled beneficiaries. Audrey and I were cautiously building a sister relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition for parental approval. As I served the meal I had prepared, I realized that the most important person at the table was Jackson. By breaking the cycle of financial enabling and emotional manipulation, I had changed not just my own life, but the family legacy he would inherit. He would grow up knowing his worth wasn't measured by what he could provide to others, but by the authentic connections he built through mutual respect and genuine care. That knowledge was worth every difficult conversation, every painful realization, and every dollar I had reclaimed for our future. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision about family financial support or setting boundaries with loved ones? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about navigating complex family dynamics. Don't forget to share with someone who might need encouragement in establishing healthy boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own family relationships.